Piquan Prologue. So what is Piquan? Piquan is a technique or a principle or a method or a mechanic, as it depends on from which side you're looking on it, that is to divide forces, to divide a force into 2 or 3 or more, but do not keep it on one point. What I mean with that is Piquan teaches you or helps you to learn the mechanics to deal with an incoming force that is trying to overleap yours into 2 so that you can attack at the same time. For example, in boxing you call it a jab or a counter jab. And in Piquan, it's actually not just the mechanic behind it, it's by far more that you can, that the force that is coming in is not really impacting you in a negative way. So actually it helps you to get your opponent out of balance or even give him pain. So, and that is what we try to do with Piquan. When we do every technique or every exercise we are actually doing, we are not trying to execute the exercise itself. All our exercises have a specific purpose. So, for example, if you take some flour and mix it with some yeast and so on, your goal is not to mix the flour with the yeast. Your goal is maybe to make a pizza dough, or you want to make a cake or whatsoever. So, and with that example, it's the same for martial arts. If we try to fulfill the martial art as an art, we cannot develop on it. So, because the martial art in the end is just hot air, nothing else. It's just a name and so on. The practice itself should help you to reach something else. And that means, for example, here in Piquan, we try to get the jab done in a very force-oriented way. So, and of course you can take that skill and put it somewhere else, but in the end it's simple. It's a simple jab where your opponent loses his base for power. Piquan Level 1. So in the Level 1 version, we try to simply get adjust to the mechanics, and not just to the overall mechanics, but also to the mechanics that you need to have an understanding of where it will go in the next step. For example, when we do our Piquan, we move in two directions. On the first side, we move forward. But to issue force, we have to move back without getting our hand back. That means we have to create this kind of splitting and stretching motion or stretching mechanic inside your body. So inside the body is a very vague term, so, or a very vague sentence. What we try to do is we try to get specific joints, and for example here in Piquan, the shoulder belt in a different direction, or the tension of the shoulder belt in a different direction than the sternum, or let's say chest bone. So these two move to a different direction. The same goes for your front and your rear foot, for your knee and your pelvis. And this is what you try in Level 1. In Level 1, you try to push them apart. What this is actually what we are doing. When we move with our hand to the front, as more our hand moves to the front, as more our chest bone moves back. As more our elbow moves forward, as more our shoulder belts or shoulder blades move forward, so that our shoulder girdle can get in tension. So you do not create tension just by getting stiff. You have to create tension by stretching out in a very tight manner. That means if you try to stretch out with your elbows to the side, you will feel that maybe you have too much space to stretch out. Actually, you cannot get the tension where you right now need it to where it needed to be. So you get your elbows in. Of course, now we can go with a sentence and say 2 elbows are not allowed to leave the ribcage. You can start with that. This is not the goal, because this kind of sentence keeps you there. So, but it do not bring you forward. It means for the motion. And therefore, we need to get as tight as possible, but still as movable as possible. And for the beginning, it's very important to get these direction in to divide these directions. Again, shoulder blade to the front, chest bone to the inside. So that will make your back more round, but still extends your arm length so that you can stay in that position. Then for the first level, it's important to get your huko, that is this where the thumb bone and your pointing finger bone meets, to stretch them out and push out your palm, so, or the hand root bone. As more you push out, as more your shoulder goes to the front, and as more structure you can create for the beginning. So this kind of pushing out helps you to get your shoulder blade more forward and push it more to its maximum at this time. And that was it for Level 1 Piquan.